Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
hmm
Today we're going to be taking a look at how AI is going to impact the legal profession. And, we're going to be drawing on a really interesting book called AI, the Promise, the Peril, and the Human Paradox.
It's a fascinating read.
Yeah, it really is. And it brings in perspectives
Yeah.
from thinkers like, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, Robert Greene, Yuval Noah Harari, Jordan Peterson,
A diverse group.
really diverse group. And it gets you thinking about what AI really means for the future of law, especially if you're in law school right now or if you're a lawyer. Like, how is this going to affect your job in the coming years?
Yeah. I think that's something a lot of people are wondering about.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in.
Yeah.
One of the first things that kind of jumped out at me from this book was Taleb's concept of black swan events.
Right.
These unpredictable events that kind of come out of nowhere and throw everything off. How can a legal system that's becoming more and more reliant on AI, how can it handle something that's completely unforeseen?
Yeah, that's a key question that Taleb raises. And he argues that these black swan events, the things that our traditional models just completely miss, they pose a real challenge to AI systems that are primarily trained on historical data.
Because they're looking at the past to predict the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, if you have an AI that's designed to, let's say, assess risk in real estate transactions based on past data, how's it going to deal with a situation where climate change leads to all these new legal battles over property rights in coastal areas?
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no precedent for that.
So are you saying that AI could actually become like a liability in these kind of unprecedented situations?
It's definitely a possibility, especially if lawyers start to rely on it too heavily.
Mm-hmm.
AI systems can become what we call brittle. They're really good within the boundaries of what they know, but when they encounter something completely new, something outside of those boundaries,
They can adapt.
they might not be able to. And that's where human judgment is still absolutely essential, especially when you start to think about ethical considerations.
Yeah, speaking of ethics, Robert Greene's perspective on AI in this book, it's a little bit unsettling, to be honest. He sees AI as a potential tool for manipulation, even within the legal system.
Right.
Like, how could that even work?
Okay.
Could you give me an example?
Okay, sure. Imagine a law firm that develops an AI that can analyze a judge's past rulings and then tailor their legal arguments to specifically appeal to that judge's known biases.
Oh, wow.
It's essentially gaming the system using these really sophisticated algorithms. And then the question becomes, is that ethical? How could you even detect that kind of manipulation? Those are the kinds of things that Green is forcing us to consider.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
So, is it about saying no to AI in the legal system altogether?
I think banning AI is probably unrealistic. It might even be counterproductive.
Okay.
But what is crucial is that law schools and the legal profession as a whole really prioritize education on these issues. Lawyers need to understand how these algorithms work. They need to understand the potential for misuse and how to identify, potential manipulation.
So it's like AI literacy is becoming just as important as legal literacy.
Exactly. You need both to be effective and ethical in the future of law.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's move on to Yuval Noah Harari, who brings up this idea that AI could reshape how we think about justice and the rule of law. Like AI could actually rewrite the legal narrative itself.
That's a really interesting point. He suggests that AI-driven legal tools could change how we interpret and apply legal precedent. So imagine a world where you have AI judges and they're using your personal data to tailor their verdicts to your specific circumstances.
Okay.
Now, while that might sound appealing to some, it raises serious questions about consistency, fairness, and equality under the law.
Yeah, it sounds like the legal system becomes less about a clear set of rules and more about these individualized interpretations.
Right.
But wouldn't that create all sorts of inconsistencies? What happens to the idea of legal precedent if every case is treated as unique?
Those are exactly the concerns. And it all comes back to this idea of control. Whoever controls the algorithms ultimately controls the narrative. And in this case, the narrative of justice itself.
That's pretty profound. So how do we make sure that justice remains fair and impartial in a world where AI is having such a big impact on the legal landscape? Like, where do we even begin?
That's where Jordan Peterson's emphasis on human responsibility comes in. He really believes that lawyers have a specific duty to make sure that AI is used ethically and in a way that upholds, the core values of the justice system.
So it's not enough to just understand the technology. You
Yeah.
have to wrestle with the ethical side of it, too.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's dive deeper into Peterson's perspective and what it means for lawyers to navigate this new world of AI in part 2 of our deep dive.
Picking up on that idea of responsibility, Peterson argues that we can't just outsource our moral judgment to algorithms. We can't just say, oh, well, the AI said this is the best course of action, so it must be ethically sound. Especially for lawyers, he sees a real danger in becoming too reliant on AI for ethical decision-making.
Yeah, it's easy to see how that could happen, right? If you have an AI that's spitting out legal strategies or telling you what the likely outcome of a case is going to be, it might be tempting to just kind of go along with it without really stopping to think about whether it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And that's what he calls moral atrophy, where we essentially lose the ability to think critically about right and wrong because we've become so accustomed to just deferring to the machine.
Okay, so how do we avoid that? What does it actually look like for a lawyer to use AI responsibly and ethically? Like, where do they even start?
Well, I think it starts with education. Law schools have a responsibility to really integrate ethics and philosophy into their AI curriculum. Future lawyers need the tools to grapple with these complex issues.
So it's not just about knowing the law. It's about understanding the potential consequences of using AI to interpret and apply it.
Precisely. And it goes beyond education, too. It requires a shift in mindset for the whole profession. Lawyers need to see themselves as moral agents. They're responsible for the impact of their actions, including how they use AI.
So it's not just about winning a case, it's about how you win it.
Exactly. It's about asking those tough questions, challenging assumptions, and being willing to say no to a strategy, even if the AI recommends it, if it goes against your ethical principles.
It's interesting how all of these perspectives, from Taleb to Peterson, they all kind of connect in a way. Taleb warns us about the unexpected green, about the potential for manipulation Harari, about AI's ability to reshape how we understand justice. And then Peterson reminds us that the responsibility ultimately falls on us. It's quite a lot to process.
It is, but I think what's fascinating is that they all highlight the importance of human judgment in the face of AI's growing influence. AI is undoubtedly going to change the legal landscape, but it's up to us, particularly lawyers, to make sure those changes lead to a more just and equitable society.
It's a huge responsibility, but I think you're right. Lawyers, with their training in ethics and argumentation and advocacy, they're uniquely positioned to guide how this technology is used in the legal system.
They can be the bridge between the potential of AI and the enduring values of justice.
Okay, so let's get practical for a moment. What can lawyers, especially law students who are just starting out, what can they do to prepare for this future where AI is so intertwined with law?
Well, the first thing is to embrace lifelong learning. The field of AI is constantly evolving, so you need to stay informed about the latest developments, attend conferences, read journals, take online courses. Make it a habit to continually update your knowledge.
Makes sense. It's like being a doctor. You're always learning about new treatments and technologies.
Exactly. And don't limit yourself to just legal resources. Explore fields like computer science, ethics, philosophy, even psychology. A broader understanding is going to be crucial.
So it's about interdisciplinary learning. That sounds challenging, but also incredibly interesting. And I imagine getting hands-on experience with AI tools is pretty important too.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to experiment with different AI applications in law, whether it's for legal research document review or even client communication. There are tools out there that can really help lawyers work more efficiently and effectively. But use them critically. Evaluate the tools, assess their limitations, understand the potential biases, and always think about the ethical implications.
Don't just blindly accept the output. Understand the process and the potential pitfalls.
Right. You don't want to become so reliant on AI that you lose your own critical thinking skills. Always remember that the human element of the law is fundamental. It's about people, their lives, their rights.
It's easy to get caught up in the technology, but ultimately it's about using it to serve justice and uphold the values that the legal system is built on.
And that's where we come back to that idea of responsibility. AI can be a powerful tool, but it's up to lawyers to make sure it's used for good.
Well, this has been a really insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the potential risks of AI to the opportunities it presents. But I think what stands out most is this emphasis on the role of lawyers as navigators in this new landscape.
It's about finding that sweet spot between the power of AI and the wisdom of human judgment. And it's exciting to think about the positive impact lawyers can have as they embrace this challenge.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into AI and the future of law, what final thoughts would you leave our listeners with? What's the most important thing for them to remember as they move forward in this rapidly evolving field?
It's really about recognizing that the future of law is being written right now and that lawyers have a vital role to play in that process.
Okay, so to wrap things up, let's make this actionable for our listeners. If you're a lawyer or in law school, what can you actually do to be prepared for this AI future?
I think, first off, don't underestimate understanding AI itself. You don't need to become a coder, but grasping the basics of how it works, the strengths, the weaknesses, that's going to be essential.
It's almost like a new language, right? The
Yeah.
language of algorithms and data.
Yeah.
Got to be able to speak it to some degree to really work in this new legal world.
Exactly. And alongside that technical side, you've got to sharpen those critical thinking skills, especially when evaluating AI tools. Can you spot biases in the algorithms? Do you get the limitations of the data they're trained on? These are the questions to be asking.
So it's not just DB knowing the law anymore. It's knowing the tech that's going to be used with it, like a new kind of legal literacy.
Right. And remember, AI is evolving so fast. Constant learning is key. Take those online courses, go to conferences, even just keeping up with research, it all matters.
I'm also hearing this theme of learning outside just law. Not enough to stay in your lane, got to look at computer science, ethics, even philosophy to grasp AI's impact.
Absolutely. The more well-rounded you are, the better you'll handle this complexity. And don't forget the human side. AI is a tool, powerful, but it's on us to ensure it's used ethically.
So AI may be great at crunching numbers, predicting outcomes, but it's still human judgment, our empathy, that commitment to justice, which decides if this tech is a force for good in law.
It's about that balance, AI's efficiency, its analysis power, mixed with the values that have always made justice what it is.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. The future of law is going to be with AI. That much is clear, and it's on all of us, lawyers, students, even just citizens, to shape it right.
The key is approaching this with curiosity, the willingness to learn, to adapt, and truly committing to using this powerful tech to make a more just and fair world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll have more resources in the show notes for those who want to keep exploring. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible where AI and law meet.